Hi, John Morgan here with Bulbs Market and Greenhouses, and welcome to our autumn gardening webinar. This is kind of a new thing for us, and it's kind of experimental. In fact, I forgot to set my phone on Do Not Disturb. There we go. But anyhow, this is something a little bit new for us, so kind of working out the technical glitches. So just kind of bear with us tonight as we do this webinar on fall gardening. So without too much more yammering, let me go ahead and get started. Oh, there we go. Hopefully you can still see me down here in the corner. For our autumn gardening webinar, I wanted to cover a few different things. And I keep looking off camera because I've got a laptop set up over here with a couple chat windows. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can chat with us through the chat box, or if you're watching it on our website at bulbsmarket.com/stream, there's a chat window there where you can send us your questions. So, as a way of introduction, my name's John Morgan, and I do quite a bit here at Bulbs Market. I handle our IT related stuff, but my background's also in education, so I tend to do a lot of the educational outreach that we do. So as I was saying, tonight's webinar, of course, it's live, and feel free to ask questions. So if you're watching this on our website, you'll see a chat window exactly like the one that's above my head right here. And you can log into it. You don't have to create, it's through Chat Tango. You don't have to create an account with them. You can actually either ask a question anonymously, or you can set up a temporary nickname to use for tonight. And then you can also use YouTube chat, and I also have my phone here, so if you send a message to @bulbsmarket, I should see the notification. But that's the ways that you can communicate with me during tonight's webinar. So tonight's topics that I want to cover is, first of all, the plants of autumn. Right now it might seem kind of like a futile effort, to plant stuff in your garden or in your flower beds, because the first frosts of fall are just a few weeks away. But there's really quite a few things that you can plant right now that can handle the frost just fine. So things like pansies, chrysanthemums, or mums for short, and ornamental cabbage and kale can all be planted right now. And it's also a great time to plant trees and perennials. And then also there's fall vegetable gardening. So really, even though the weather's getting cooler, you don't have to retreat indoors just yet for winter. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about this evening is the plants of autumn. And these are kind of the three major types of ornamental plants that you'll see planted in the fall. And they all have unique aspects that make them perfect for this time of year. So first, let's talk a little bit about pansies. And to talk about pansies, I actually have a video from John Neff, who's the manager at our Belpre store. So let me jump over to that, and I'll let him do some talking about pansies.
Hi, John Neff here with Bulbs Market in Belpre. I want to let you know that we've got our winter hardy pansies in. We've got over 20 varieties and another 20 varieties of violas. These guys are perfect to plant now. They're frost proof. They can be planted and survive any cold weather all winter long, and next spring they'll stand right up and give you your flower beds an early spring color. They're perfect all winter long, and we'll have great selection between now and November. Stop by and see what we got. Thank you.
Okay, so pansies, there's a wide variety of colors. He mentioned that we have 20 varieties of pansies and 20 varieties of violas. Now that's something that I kind of forgot to put in a slide here, is the difference between a pansy and a viola. A pansy has a larger bloom on it, and a viola has a smaller bloom. Other than that, they're pretty much the exact same plant. In fact, pansies are derived from the viola species through selective breeding. And pansies are one of the oldest ornamental plants. People started breeding them back in the 17 and 1800s. And because of that, there is a huge number of varieties. One of our main fall crops here at Bob's is pansies. And to name all of them or name the list, I mean, it's a huge list. But something cool about pansies is they're the only ornamental flower that actually has all the colors of the rainbow. So you can get the blues, the purples, yellows, reds, and then everything in between. There's even black pansies. And of course you have the solid white pansies. So literally every color of the rainbow. But sometimes a weakling, we'll call a pansy. But that's really not the case, because pansies, they're tough little they're tough little plants. They are pretty much the last plants to bloom in the fall and the first plants to bloom in the springtime. And they can survive downright Arctic temperatures, down to 20 degrees below zero, and they'll be just fine. So pansies make a great choice to plant in the fall, because they'll actually go dormant over the winter and then come back out and start blooming again in the springtime. So there are a few things to keep in mind when you're planting pansies, just to get the most out of the plants. The first thing is to plant them in flower beds, primarily that face east and north. That's going to protect them from harsh winds in the wintertime. And those winds, can kind of beat them up and make them look tattered. And also, if you're planting them on the east side, they get that first morning warm light. But that's kind of the optimal place to plant them. I've had luck even planting them on the west side of my house, where they get evening sun. But it just depends on your local conditions. You also want to fertilize them initially, and also water them when you first plant them. Fall tends to be a little bit drier of a season, so your landscape might need a little bit of additional watering in the fall. But a good thing to keep in mind is, with watering pansies, you want to water them up until we get like that first hard freeze, because you don't want the roots on the pansies to freeze. That's the one thing that can kind of harm them. And you kind of want to let the soil dry out a little bit before that first really hard freeze. And I lost my mouse. There it is. Pansies, like I said, they'll go dormant during the coldest months. And then they'll revive kind of in March and April. So when they go dormant, you'll have a nice beautiful bloom on a pansy. We'll get a freeze, and that bloom will kind of wilt down, and the plant might look like it's kind of dead. But you'll see like a little green patch where that plant is. And sure enough, we start getting warmer days in March and April, it's going to perk back up and start growing again. Pansies are cool weather plants, so going on into May, into June, you'll notice pansies start to get kind of leggy. They'll start getting taller, and they get kind of gangly and not too pretty once the weather starts warming up. And that, of course, is a sign that it's time to replace them with your regular springtime bedding plants. And as I said before, avoid areas where the roots might freeze. Pansies are great for flower beds in the wintertime if you want them to make it through the winter. Not so much in pots and containers. If you have them in a pot or a container where the roots are above ground and that container can freeze, that can kill the pansies. And then also, whenever you're planting pansies in beds, you want to make sure that you pack the soil down really well around them. Because something that I've personally seen happen is with freeze and thaw cycles in the wintertime, especially if the temperatures are really fluctuating. Kind of like last winter where we had a warmer winter. If you have continuous freeze and thaw cycles, it can actually kind of push the pansies up out of the ground if they're not planted and rooted in really well. And I've seen that happen before. Actually, I'm here at our headquarters, and you've probably seen, if you live here in Mason, the pansies that we plant along the retaining wall there in the front. And I've seen them pop out before in the wintertime due to freezing and thawing. The next plant that I want to talk about is chrysanthemums. So chrysanthemums, here in our area, we sell them as an annual plant. But I'm going to kind of get to a little bit about that here in just a second. But they have a wide selection of colors, usually in yellows and reds. And then some, like the one up above me right here, can kind of start to get into a purple hue. But you want to plant them in full sun with good drainage. Mums like to have really well-drained soil, and you want to water them 2 to 3 times per week, because even though they need soil with good drainage, they do kind of like to have their feet wet. And also, whenever you fertilize them, you want to fertilize them with a liquid fertilizer, like Jack's Classic that we carry in our stores. As I mentioned before, in our area, we tend to sell them more as an annual plant, something that you don't expect to survive through the winter. However, it's kind of a 50-50 shot, but you might be able to overwinter your mums. And there's a few factors that play into it. The first thing is to make sure that the soil's moist before the first freeze. By doing that, it kind of gives them a better shot at the root ball staying a little bit warmer and not freezing totally. Also, after you get that first freeze, the mum is going to die back on top of it. The big ball of flowers, kind of like what you see above me right here. Those are going to die back. So you want to mulch it really well after that first freeze. And something that I do to help kind of protect it is I'll leave that dead plant material on top, and then I'll just pile some straw over top of it. Because what you're doing is, and you don't want to, really pack it down, but you're just kind of creating a little insulation barrier around it. And by using mulch or straw to kind of help insulate it, it might make it through the winter. So in April, you can kind of pull that mulch back, and if you're lucky, you're going to see some little green growth starting to sprout up out. And over on our website, we have an article about overwintering mums that goes into a little bit more in-depth detail about it. Because once they come back out in the springtime, if they do make it, you need to trim them a couple times throughout the growing season to make sure that they bloom in the fall. Otherwise, they'll bloom early, and you really don't want that because, of course, they're a fall plant. The last really ornamental plant I wanted to talk about tonight is ornamental cabbage, and also in that bunch is ornamental kales. And really in the horticulture industry, there's been kind of a divide over the last few years. It used to be some of the plants were referred to as ornamental cabbage, some were referred to as ornamental kales, when really they're both the exact same species, Brassica oleracea. So now they've kind of started just naming everything ornamental cabbage. But like regular cabbage, again, it's the exact same species, Brassica oleracea, as edible cabbage. But these, instead of being grown to eat, they're grown for their ornamental qualities. So like the one you see above me here, it has like the nice pink veins. And then there's some that have like green around the outside, but the middle of them will be white or red or purple. And something that's kind of cool about them is the colder it gets outside, the brighter the colors become. So it's something you can plant in your landscape as kind of a focal point or a little pop of color. And as the winter gets cooler, as the air gets cooler, you'll start to see the colors come out and become more vivid with it. Again, like mums, they like to be planted in well-drained soil. Unlike mums, though, ornamental cabbages like to dry out a little bit. So in between waterings, you kind of want to let the roots dry out just a little bit to where it's dry to the touch, if you feel the top of the soil. And conditions do matter when it comes to ornamental cabbage. This year, we're having a pretty cool fall, and we've had a pretty cool summer. But if we had a really hot fall, hot weather can cause ornamental cabbages to bolt. So they'll grow a stalk and a seed head, and that's pretty much the end of the plant. If it's too wet out, you can kind of go the opposite way and get kind of a wimpy, kind of tattered looking plant. So really, kind of a nice balance in between is where you want to be with ornamental cabbage. Yeah, West Virginia hick chick just commented. It says, "I love the kale," and yeah, ornamental cabbages and kales, they're great. And to be honest, I've worked here at Bob's for about 8 years. I didn't know about ornamental cabbage and kale when I started working here, and I consider myself kind of a green thumb when it comes to gardening. And it's one of those plants that once you discover it and the varieties of them and how beautiful they are, they're just a great thing to include in your landscape in the fall. And they can be a real conversation starter. I mean, I've had them planted at my house, and people walk up to the house and go, "What is that? That's an amazing plant." Moving on to our next thing is planting trees and perennials. So again, just because it's fall and winter's on the way, it doesn't mean that we have to pack our gardening tools away, and go inside. Right now is actually the perfect time to plant trees and perennials. So when it comes to planting trees, as I said, right now is the perfect time. Because the soil's already warm, it gives more time for the roots to get established as the temperatures cool down in the fall. Because in the fall months, it's going to take a while for the ground to really cool off. And unlike in the springtime, if you plant a tree in the springtime, the ground tends to be colder and it's taking time to warm up. So it's actually going to take longer for roots to become established in the springtime. Again, with planting trees, we've got some resources on our website to help you plant trees. If you go into the search box on our homepage. But something that you want to do again is keep the tree well watered until the soil freezes. And you also want to start off using a starter fertilizer like Bonide's Root and Grow. And I actually stopped by the market today and picked up a container of it. It is a starter fertilizer, and it's a 4-10-3 mix. But it's designed to stimulate root growth and really help roots grow and become established. Now, something cool that we have is a deal with Bonide where you can get a 2-year warranty on your trees if you buy them through Bob's and you buy Root and Grow and a soil amendment. So if you buy a tree, soil amendment, and Root and Grow, you can get a 2-year warranty on your tree. And if the tree dies, all that you have to do is fill out a form. Pretty sure we have a link to it on our website. But you fill out a form, take some pictures of the tree that died, and send it into Bonide, and then they'll send you a gift card or a gift certificate that's good for the price of the tree at our store. So right now, it's also a terrific time to plant perennials. And up above my head here, I have a picture of a plant tag, and you'll see these out in our stores this fall. So anything with the fall is fantastic tag are perfect to be planted right now. Ornamental grasses, hostas, peonies. If you watched my live broadcast a little bit earlier today, I was showing some bees that were on some lavender down there. It's a great time to plant lavender. There's just a huge list. I think we have some rose bushes right now that can be planted. It's just a wide variety of plants. It's also a really good time to divide established perennials. So perennials that are well established, let's say you have a huge block of hostas, now would be a good time to split those and have 2, 3, or 4 blocks of hostas. Also right now, you can plant spring flowering bulbs. So things like tulips, daffodils, all of those, hyacinths. They can all be planted right now to come up in the springtime. And to me, doing that, it's kind of like Christmas because I'm kind of a forgetful person. So I'll plant bulbs, then totally forget about them. And then in the springtime, it's like a Christmas gift for myself. But yeah, that's one great thing that you can do right now. And of course, if you planted pansies, when the pansies are starting to come out and kind of revive in the springtime, you also have your bulbs blooming. So By doing those two things, you can add a lot of color early on into your landscape in the springtime. So this is our last thing tonight. I wanted to talk about fall vegetable gardening because, a lot of people right now, a lot of my neighbors are cleaning out their gardens, but they're not really planting anything in its place. They've canned their beans, and they've frozen their corn and frozen tomatoes or canned them. And after all that in the fall, or in, late July, August, they're done for the year. But right now, you can be growing plants that you can harvest fresh from the garden all the way up past the first frost. And you can have fresh salads and onions, turnips right now you can plant. And, when it comes to leafy vegetables, there's leaf lettuce, Swiss chard, kale, collard greens. With root crops, you have turnips and beets. All these things can be planted right now, and they'll perform great right through the fall. And there are a few tricks that you can do to even extend your growing season. So this is actually a picture from my own garden. You can use something as simple as a little row cover like I have here. These row covers, they're only about a foot tall, about a foot wide. But I have them over a row of leaf lettuce, black-seeded Simpson leaf lettuce, and some Swiss chard. And right now I've got it on there to help shade and help keep those plants cool because they're a cool weather crop. But I've got the ends open, so it's still allowing airflow through, and it's helping keep them cool. Now once we start getting into frost, I can close that up on the ends, and it'll help protect them from the frost. That'll extend the growing season a little bit. If you want to go even further, you can build something like a cold frame that's basically like a miniature greenhouse. And with a cold frame, you can grow leaf lettuce and Swiss chard pretty much all winter long. And if you want to take it even a step further, probably the ultimate thing you can do is build a greenhouse. And then you can have fresh produce year round. But these are all great things that you can do right now as far as protecting your garden. And the last thing is your compost pile. We don't want to neglect our compost piles in the fall. The first thing you want to do, because fall again can be a dry time of the year, you want to check up on the moisture in your compost pile, because compost needs moisture in order for all the bacteria to grow in it that's helping break down all that organic matter. And also if you have worms in your compost pile, you want to keep them nice and happy. However, getting into sort of the colder temperatures, when we're getting close to a freeze, you want to stop mixing your pile, because it becomes a matter of preserving what you have in the pile that's alive. So the bacteria and worms, you want to keep them safe and insulated in the middle of the pile during the winter. And along with that, you want to insulate the pile. So either use straw, or the best thing is nature provides us each year with a great source of insulation in fall leaves. So rake up those leaves, save them, pack them in around your compost pile to help insulate it and keep it nice and healthy during the winter time. And well, that is our first webinar. But yeah, that is some great tips on your fall landscape. And again, just because it's fall, you don't have to quit gardening. there's still a lot of things that can be done right now. So over the next few weeks, I'm going to post some blog posts that will help give you some other great ideas for the fall. And if anybody has a suggestion for our next webinar, I'd like to start doing these at least like maybe once a month, have a webinar. So if you've got ideas that you'd like me to talk about going into the winter time, feel free to shoot me an email or a message on Facebook with your idea. So, well, until next time, keep growing.